Hey, my friends. Sorry, this video is a bit rushed, just done off the cuff because some details have just been brought to my attention, which I believe that we need to have a warning that should shake every Australian to the core. It's not coming from outside our borders, but from within the walls of Canberra itself. Now, the Australian government has just moved to grant the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation Amendment Bill number 2, 2025, permanent powers that many legal experts, civil liberties advocates, and everyday citizens are now calling nothing less than a march towards authoritarianism in this country. Now, these aren't technical adjustments to our security laws. Make that straight. They are fundamental changes, powers that allow the state, through ASIO, to seize and question people, virtually kidnap them off the streets, including with those with no suspicion of any crime whatsoever, for up to a week without judicial oversight, without a traditional warrant, and without the basic rights most of us have, and most of us have always taken for granted. So what's changed? Let's break this down a little bit. Firstly, compulsory questioning and detention made permanent. Now, until recently, ASIO's power to bring someone in for questioning, even someone not suspected of any offence at all, was temporary. It had a review mechanism in there. Now, this regime is being made permanent. That means the government no longer has to justify every few years why ordinary people can be pulled in for interrogation. Think about that. Just think about that in the context of what that can mean for every free Australian. Now, you have no right to silence. You will be legally compelled to answer their questions, because under these new amended laws, if ASIO has a questioning warrant, you must answer their questions. It's a criminal offence punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment if you refuse to provide information, or if you refuse to appear, or you refuse to produce documents that ASIO demand from you. It sounds dystopian, doesn't it? It is dystopian. Because let that sink in. Your right to remain silent, a cornerstone of democratic justice in most Western nations, has just been eroded, just been taken away with the tick of a pen in Canberra. And then at top of the authoritarians add a secrecy and a gag order. This is important. If you are brought in under these powers, you may not even tell anyone that it happened. Not even your spouse, not your family, not your lawyer. That silence, it's in itself is enforced by criminal penalty as well. I believe that could be up to 5 years imprisonment as well. So this is not just detention. This is an enforced secrecy. Imagine being pulled off the street, even for just 24 hours, and not being allowed to explain to your partner where you've been and what you've been doing. I personally believe that trust issues may evolve from that in many relationships. Because, I can't tell you where I've been, dear. I can't tell you what I've been doing. And then if your wife does find out about it, if she tells anyone else, she can also go, or your husband can also go to jail for 5 years. I can't put that into words. Now, we then see the judicial oversight reduced to just a rubber stamp. In normal arrest powers, an independent judge or a magistrate must assess whether there's justification. Under these new laws, ASIO can obtain questioning and detention warrants without traditional judicial interrogation regarding evidence or suspicion. There is no robust adversarial scrutiny, meaning the person has no real chance to challenge the basis for their detention in advance. And this is dangerous, but what makes it dangerous? Ordinary people can be questioned without any suspicion of crime. These are not just terrorism suspects, not just hardened criminals, gangland criminals. They are people like you and like me, everyday Australians. ASIO chooses because they might assist in intelligence collection. Nothing to do with crime, intelligence collection. There need be no evidence of wrongdoing by anyone at all, before this questioning begins. It might just be a case where one day, years ago, you happened to cross the paths of the same black cat that a person who is now of interest to ASIO did. Definitely dystopian. Now that puts every single Australian, including children down to 14 years old, believe it or not, potentially in the crosshairs, depending on what ASIO decides is intelligence important relation to terrorism offence. And let's be clear about this. Rights to silence won't protect you. Long-standing legal protections, like the right to remain silent or the right to not self-incriminate, are replaced by the compulsion to answer. You are compelled to answer. In practical terms, you could be forced to provide information about your beliefs, your associations, your communications, or face jail. That sounds like North Korea. That sounds like parts of China, where the government wants to know everything about you. If it doesn't like what it hears about you, you go to jail, or worse. And they will force secrecy, which breaks trust in the relationships, as I said before. Imagine this scenario. As I said before, it was 24 hours, but imagine your spouse disappears for a week. You worry. You try to find them. You ask questions, but the law says, under threat of imprisonment, you cannot be told what happened. If you were detained, or you were aware of this detention, you could face 5 years in prison for telling anyone. That includes your own partner. That's not theory. That is how the law has been written and defended by ASIO and these politicians. We haven't even heard Pauline Hanson, the voice of the people, so I'm hearing, which I don't believe. We haven't heard her speaking out against this. I wonder why. This doesn't just threaten freedoms. It undermines the fundamental trust between spouses and families. One partner could be detained and the other legally barred from knowing why. This is not a slippery slope. It's a headlong slide into towards secrecy and accountability. And it can touch any Australian down to 14 years old. Remember that. These laws have been repeatedly criticised by civil liberties organisations and the Law Council of Australia, which warned that making these extraordinary powers permanent removes the only safeguard that we had: periodic review and democratic oversight in Parliament. Every 3 years they had to review these laws or these actions and decide. But these politicians, they said, oh no, let's see about making these permanent. Even judges in the review committees have previously highlighted the lack of clarity and challenge mechanisms in these powers. And ordinary Australians online have rightly called this authoritarianism, as I do. This government is going way too far. Every one of our politicians is going way too far. And compared the truth of these powers with historical precedents in oppressive regimes, not because they want radical change, but because the potential for abuse is so real, why should we care? This isn't about supporting terrorism or opposing national security. We love our country. We are patriots of our country. And security is important for our country. But in a free society, security must not come at the cost of our individual rights, accountability and transparency. When a government gives a secretive agency the right to detain, to question and compel answers from anyone with fear of jail, without any crime being committed, without any even thought of a crime being committed, without any oversight, and with a gag order, the very essence of freedom is lost. This law doesn't just threaten your liberties. It also threatens your right to silence, your right to know why you've even been detained. Your relationships and trusts at home will suffer, and the balance between citizen and state is going to just, that divide is just going to get wider. Now, a society that cannot speak of its own laws because it may be punished for doing so is not a democratic society. It's a state ruled by fear and secrecy. If these changes become entrenched without public debate, believe me, we will all look back and wonder. We will wonder, when did we trade our liberty for the illusion of safety? Have we got safety from the government now? Have we got safety from many police officers now? We've seen so much where the police have abused their powers and they seem to be shooting people, especially mentally ill people, more and more in our communities. And think about it. What's going to be taken next from us? What is going to be taken next? What would they choose to take away from us next? Get informed. Talk about this with your community, my friends. Ask questions while you still can. Because the people who do not defend their freedoms before they are taken will never get them back once they're gone. Once they're gone, they're gone. I'm Brian. This is Voice in the Wilderness Australia. As I said, this is just a quick broadcast because I heard this information come to me and I believed you needed to hear about it. Stay tuned for the next episode that I bring. Bless you.